Hey, I'm Herald sportswriter Manny Navarro.
Charles Fishbein of Elite Scouting Services.
We're here to talk about the Miami Hurricanes 2015 signing class. All right, Fish, so yesterday the Canes ended up signing 20 recruits as part of this class, ranked 26, I think, by 247 Sports composite rankings. Hurricanes fans a little disappointed. They think that's a little bit too high. They look at the number of recruits that Miami got, and they say not enough of them from South Florida. What are your initial thoughts on this class?
I think considering the situation they came into this year in recruiting, being a 6-7 football team, a lot of negative vibes around the program from the fans and the media and everything. I thought they did pretty well closing out with the Cedric Redwine and some of the other players that they did. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Redwine. He's basically one of three guys that they picked up on signing day. A couple of others here to mention. James King, the linebacker out of Booker T. Washington, who was committed to Florida Atlantic. Give me your thoughts on Redwine and King, and how quickly do you think they can turn into starters for Miami?
Well, James King's a guy that came over from Miami Beach a couple years ago. When he turned on his film as a sophomore, he looked like one of those guys that was going to be a heavily recruited kid. Then he goes over to Booker T, where they're loaded with players every year, and he's not the focal point. So I think some of that attention was drawn away from him, actually, in that situation, going to Booker T. But James is a very active player, makes a lot of plays on the field. He's kind of like a poor man's Sean Spence. Cedric Redwine, on the other hand, I thought he was a guy that University of Miami should have offered way earlier in the process. Every game you turned on this year, he made big plays. It didn't matter whether it was, I think it was a Carroll City game, he either had a pick six or a touchdown on a kickoff return. But those are the guys they need, guys that are playmakers, and both of those guys were very impactful on their teams this year.
Two cornerbacks, Michael Jackson out of Birmingham, Spain Park High School in Alabama is the other cornerback. You look at the secondary, they also added Jaquan Johnson and Robert Knowles, two local kids. Talk about Jaquan Johnson a little bit from Killian and Robert Knowles from Edison.
Well, Jaquan's been on the radar for the last couple of years. Jaquan's one of those guys that he's an impact player. You don't look at the little things that he does throughout the game as far as making plays on special teams. I think every game we went to, either at a block punt or a block kick, he intercepts balls, he returns kicks. He's a football player. I think, he's not going to measure out at 6 foot, run a 4.4, but he's going to be one of those guys you turn on the film, he's always going to make those plays. Knowles was a guy that came on. Edison's one of those programs that's always had athletes that, they turn guys out. Devontae Freeman started at Edison. Brandon Washington. So they've had guys. Knowles was one of those guys that I thought he had a very good senior year. I think if he had made an impact as a junior, there would have been more programs on him. Plus, he was a late qualifier. So Miami, I think, got a steal there.
So those are the four guys in the secondary. 11 guys on defense overall. Linebacker, you mentioned James King earlier. They also got Jamie Gordonier out of New Jersey. Also picked up Charles Perry out of Royal Palm Beach. I know you like him a lot.
Yeah, Charles Perry is a guy committed early, shut down his recruitment. So when that happens, when they take get rid of all the noise outside, Charles Perry would have been a guy that was heavily recruited. Reminds me a lot of John Beeson, played running back at Royal Palm. You just turn on his film, you got to like it. He's very long, he's an athletic guy. They need playmakers on that side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball. I think Perry's as good as they come at linebacker.
Four big-sized defensive linemen in this class. We'll go over them quickly here. Ryan Fine, 6'3", 310 out of Bradenton IMG Academy. Richard McIntosh, 6'4", 278 out of Cardinal Gibbons, local kid obviously. Kendrick Norton was the signing day surprise, 6'3", 310 out of Jacksonville Trinity Christian. And of course Scott Patchen out of IMG Academy as well, 6'6", 238. Who do you like of that group? Who do you think makes an immediate impact at Miami?
I think they're going to have to rely on all four of these guys to make an impact. Miami needs guys on the defensive line that are impactful across the board. I think Richard McIntosh, he's a big guy. He's, pushing about 270. He really improved this year. Last year he was kind of one of those guys, was a high potential guy but hadn't fulfilled that potential. You turn on the film this year, he's in the backfield. He's learned certain moves that he didn't have the year before. I think he's a guy, especially at Miami inside, he could come in and play right away.
I thought the pickup of the defensive tackle out of Jacksonville, Norton, was a big deal for Miami because he was a kid who was, I guess, also getting looked at by Auburn. And obviously defensive tackles have been an area of concern for Miami for a couple of years now.
Well, he's more of a nose guard with the defense that they play, that 3-4 front. They want to put him over the center more. He's more of like Cortell Jenkins. He gives them a big, wide body. They want to run a certain type of scheme where the nose can get penetration in the backfield. He gives them that big body that they haven't had. They've had guys that are a little smaller, not as big as this kid. Plus, you watch his offensive film, you see the guy, he's very athletic. He can pull, he can get out in space and knock you out.
Flipping over to the offensive side, they got 9 signees on offense. 3 skill guys, no quarterback in this class. People were a little disappointed about that. What do you think about not getting a quarterback in this class? Is that big a deal with Brad Kaya there?
Well, I think that's the one thing that hurt them with Kaya is Kaya had such a good freshman year. You know as a player that if you're coming in, he's going to be there the next 2 years. They got Malik Rozier, so he kind of offsets that. They haven't played him a whole lot. You want that quarterback every year because you never know. Guys get injured. You saw at Ohio State this year. Yeah. They lose, they're down to their 3rd string. So at Miami, they don't have that luxury right now. They got to keep Kaya healthy. But they got a great one next year already committed in Jack Allison.
You look at the running back position. They had Jordan Scarlett committed, one of 2 guys. He ends up dropping out, going to the Florida class. What do you think of Mark Walton? What do you think of their running back situation?
You saw in the state title game, Mark Walton was a special player. He took the game over. He looked like Duke Johnson in that game. I know you've compared him a little bit to Duke. He gives them a little different feel at the running back position. He can catch the ball. I think Mark's a home run player. He showed in the state title game when he was breaking off 40, 50-yard runs for touchdowns. You would have liked to have a second running back because that position, guys get injured. You've seen Duke get injured the last couple of years. You've seen Yerby got injured in high school. So with the way guys get wore and tore down, you'd like to have that. It was more of a luxury, them signing that second running back. But with Walton, they have Trayon Gray still there. They got Joseph Yerby, and Gus Edwards really improved last year. So they got 4 really good running backs.
You look at the pass catchers, you get Jerome Washington, the #1 ranked JUCO tight end in the country, out of the New Jersey, New York area. And then of course you pick up Lawrence Cage, the U.S. Army All-American out of Maryland. Fans look at this and they say, you got all this skill talent down here in South Florida. You know, did they do the right thing by going outside to get those kind of players? You
always have to make sure when you leave the state you go after the right guys. I mean, is anybody going to complain if Cager ends up Reggie Wayne or one of the DBs ends up Ed Reed? You know, so you got to be careful. They went to a part of this country that I think is very similar to South Florida, out of that Maryland, D.C. area. Miami needs to get into those areas more. I think they could fill holes in their roster with those guys. You're not going to sign 25 guys out of South Florida. These guys could come in, they could learn the ropes, get and provide an impact early on special teams and help them out.
6 offensive linemen, that's really what this signing class was all about. You look at some of the names here. Tyler Gauthier out of Venice, 6'5", 310. Jahair Jones out of junior college, 6'4", 315. Brendan Loftus, Tallahassee Godby, 6'6", 300. Hayden Mahoney out of Malvern Prep, 6'5", 290. Bar Milo, 6'6", 285. Of course, he was Brad Kaya's teammate. And then Tyree St. Louis, 6'5", 315 out of Bradenton IMG Academy. Of that group, I mean, obviously they're going to need some of these guys to play. Who do you think is most ready to do that?
Jahair being a junior college guy, they lost Eric Flowers. He's going to be the guy that plugs and plays next year. They're going to they expect him to play next year. I mean, he's a junior college guy. The other guys, they need guys that can, you know, last year they played Linder's brother. So these guys are more to come in, develop. You don't want to have to play freshmen unless you have to. I think they're more developmental guys. They have a lot of upside, some of these guys, especially Bar Marlowe and the guy from IMG. Those 2 guys can play and be 2-3 year starters down the road, but you don't want to put that on them next year.
Overall thoughts on how they did? I mean, did you think it was a good class? Was it a disappointing class? How do you shake it out?
Yeah, it all depends on where you look at it. I thought with the season that Miami had, we talked about it before, they didn't have a lot of positive vibes coming in off a couple losses, you know, 3 losses at the end of the year, then losing their bowl game. They did as well as they could under the circumstances, in my opinion.
All right, that wraps it up for your Miami Hurricanes 2015 signing class. They're #1, by the way, in 2016 already.
Well, nobody can complain about that.